What's up, nerds? Big Tom here, talking to you all about Trails, which is a smaller, lighter, quicker version of Parks, which if you've never played Parks, we do have a full Our Thoughts video for it up on our YouTube channel, but also I'm going to talk about this game both as it pertains to Parks and as if you've never played Parks before. And let's start with that first. So Trails is a one-way time track game, which is kind of similar to worker placement. You have a little, I guess you could call him a worker, but here you have a hiker that moves along this trail. You only go 1 or 2 spaces forward on this trail, and like a worker placement spot, when you land on that spot, whatever's there you either get one of the 3 resources. There's a spot to exchange resources and a spot to get bird cards, which are both points, and they could have birds on them. Whoever has the most birds at the end of the game will get bonus points, but you'd move forward 1 or 2 spaces. You can't go the other way, and you actually have a little canteen thing where you can go as far down as you want, so you can go all the way to the end of the trail if you want. There's also a trail beginning and a trail head, which are spaces, but they work a little bit differently. When you get to the end of the trail, a couple of things happen. First of all, you actually turn your piece back and you start traveling the other way. Now again, you only move forward, which I know is kind of like going backwards on the trail, but you only move forward, you can't go around. You know what I mean? Whatever way you're facing, that's the direction you have to go, 1 or 2 spaces, unless you use your canteen. There also is this sun token that moves down, that is kind of like the timer for the game. It moves down and you get whatever bonus it's pointing to, and once it gets all the way to the end, that's what triggers the end of the game. Whenever the sun token moves past spots on the trail other than trail end or trail beginning, the tile actually flips over to like a night side tile that is a little bit better than the side beforehand. And when you get to the end, that is when you can complete, I think they're called badges. You can spend the resources that you have gained to complete cards that are out there for points and for other little special abilities that are on the card. And those are the 2 main ways that you get points. They are those badges cards that you spend resources to complete, and the bird cards, which both have points on them, and if you have the most birds, will give you some bonus points. One final little thing in this game is there's this little bear meeple that moves along the track. Whenever you land on him, you roll a die and he moves to a different space and you get whatever is on that space. And that's pretty much it. It's a very light, very quick game. Like, you pretty much know how to play. I mean, there's still a Watch It Played video by Rodney Smith. You should check that out for more specific details, but it's a very quick, very straightforward game that pretty much anybody could play. I was overall kind of impressed with this game. The gameplay is simple, yet, there's a good amount of decisions you have to make, right? You do have a limit of the resources, so completing cards when you get to the end of the trail, you can't just, go all the way to the end and then all the way come back and then go all the way to the end, just get tons and tons of resources, complete tons and tons of cards. You do have to be strategic in which cards you complete, and if you're going to go for birds or cards, because you do kind of want to go for both, right? You don't want to let somebody run away with all the birds. Now, there is a little bit of luck involved in general, there's a lot of luck in these types of games, Euro games, like badge cards that show up could just happen to be really good for you. Oh, this one gives me a point for every one of these badges that I have, and I already have a bunch, or this card is cheaper for each one of these badges that I have, and again, I already have a bunch. Same thing with the birds cards. I think 3 points is the highest and 0 points is the lowest. I think some cards have 2 birds on them, but most of them have 1 or 0. It could just so happen that you draw a bird card and I draw a bird card. You drew 1 point, I drew 1 point, and a bird. We got pretty much the exact same thing, except mine was just better. We took the same action and I got a better thing. And of course, the bear mechanic is pretty random. You roll the die. Like, I had a buddy who landed on the gain a bird card space that had the bear on it, and he rolled the die and it told you to put the bear wherever you want, so he kept it on the bird space, so he got to do 2 cards back to back. And I said, okay, that's pretty strong. You already had a ton of bird cards. And now what's really funny is, while I was thinking, okay, that's imbalanced, that's pretty strong, maybe that's one of those things that you need to know, hey, birds are really strong, I actually ended up winning the game because I had the most birds. Like, he was taking all of the cards that had points on them and none of the cards that had a lot of birds on them. And I just so happened to get both a card with 2 birds, and actually I took the 3-pointer. So, and because I had the most birds, I got the 4-point token, and I had a couple other cards that said you'll get points, extra points, if you have the most birds. So while the game is a lot of random and whatnot, there are enough avenues to get points. I know it's just the badges and the bird cards, but within there are enough decisions to make it such that it's not just if one person gets 1 card or does one thing, they kind of have a big head start. Even though it might seem that way sometimes, I don't think it really is. Now, to compare this game to Parks is probably actually where I am the most impressed with this game. It is very similar to Parks, and they could have just watered down Parks like crazy and just removed a couple of mechanics and put out pretty much the same game, but just quicker. And I really don't think they did that. I think this is its own game. Yes, it is lighter and quicker than Parks, but not by a lot, like maybe 10%, 15, 20.
494 months.
I could see that happening.
495 months. That's just...
So Parks does have a one-way time track, but it is really a one-way time track. You never turn around, which is in Trails, which is kind of a new thing in Trails. And you shuffle the tiles in between rounds, but also you had 2 hikers, and whenever you landed on a space, that blocked another person from going to that space, unless they paid a campfire token, which is something that isn't in Trails. And probably the biggest thing in Parks that is no longer in Trails is there were some like special ability cards you could get. You could get just like constant special abilities, or there were some things, canteen things that you had to spend water to trigger. Now the badges do give you other little bonuses and stuff, so that thing is kind of ported over a little bit, but the whole idea of a separate deck for special abilities is probably the biggest thing that's gone. And there's only 3 resources instead of 4, and there's no wild resources. Like, there's a lot of things that you can tell are the same, and a lot of things that you can tell are missing, but they also kind of added in new things. Like, again, flipping the tiles to the night side, going back the other way, the majority of the birds thing, the bear mechanic where you roll the die. Like, it really does feel like a game that is inspired by Parks, not just a carbon copy of Parks. So it is in that arena, so to speak, that I am the most impressed. I really thought I was just going to be Parks and watered down, but it's just a game that feels like Parks. Now, I think the 2 biggest questions with this is, 1, which one is better? Obviously, I think Parks is better. Not by a lot, mind you, but, I mean, it just has more stuff going on. Just in general, I like more complex games. I like games with a little bit more meat on them. I think light, quick games serve their purpose, and I think this game does serve a purpose. I could probably play it with my mom. It could be a great intro game, all that type of stuff. But just in general, I would probably choose Parks over this. But the other question that people are asking is, should you own both? And that is a tougher question. For me personally, probably not. Like, Wes has our review copy of Parks, and I'm probably just going to let him keep that, and I'll keep Trails and kind of call it a day there. Now, one of my buddies, when we were playing Trails, said he wanted to own both. So I guess it really is up to you. Based on what I have told you thus far about, where it's similar and where it is different, I'm going to have to leave that up to you. But just knowing that personally, the way that I treat games, I've actually come to... whenever I play a game that's really similar to another game, it's hard for me to keep it just in general. Like any new deck building game I look at and I go, okay, well, I already have Star Realms and Legendary and whatever. How is this one any different? Like, I've played Shards of Infinity, and because I already have everything for Star Realms and they feel so similar, I just don't really feel the need to own Shards of Infinity. But again, that's not to say that Shards of Infinity isn't good, and I'm definitely not ragging on Trails. I already said I think it's great. I like it a lot. I'm just going to leave that up to you as to whether or not you feel the need to own both. Now, also, I think the price point is pretty low on this game. It's more travel size, so again, there may be benefits to owning this over Parks or to owning this in addition to Parks. But anyways, I feel like I've been talking way too much. I'm going to put a purchase link to this game and probably Parks and the Nightfall expansion in the description box down below. Go ahead and get yourself one of those, at least. Also down there is going to be a link for Game Toppers. Game Toppers are amazing and super awesome and wonderful. If you've been watching our channel for a while, you know that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And of course, while you're down there, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored. Ba-boom.